Hi, this is Dan Henk, and welcome to another edition of the Skull Session podcast. And today, my guest is I know I'm going to fuck this up. Yaroslav, how do
Yes,
you say it? I'm sorry.
Yaroslav Barsukov.
Okay, yeah.
But you get the name right. It's perfect.
I try.
No,
But
that was a perfect try, by the way, because the worst, but we can talk about it later. But the worst time, my name was mangled was when I sold a story to a beautiful podcast called Starship Sofa,
okay,
and and the host is Tony Smith. He has like a really thick Scottish accent,
right.
and they told me beforehand, like, Yari, send us the pronunciation of your name. And I was like, I was a lazy ass. I didn't do that in time. Like I sent him something, but they said, like, oh, we've already recorded everything, but don't worry about it. Don't worry, everything's fine. And the guy tried like I think 3 times to pronounce it, and he was like the third time he just gave up and said, like,
He mangled
then
it really bad.
he mangled it, but also in a funny way. I don't mind, in a funny way. So your pronunciation.
What's the origin of that name? Like, where did it come from?
Well, Yaroslav is an old Russian name. It's also very popular. I think it has like Slavic roots because Yarilo was a god in the Slavic pantheon, and Yaroslav is, I think, from the etymology of the name, it's someone who praises, Yarilo. So it's kind of the god of the sun. And it's also very popular in Czechia and Czech Republic, and a lot of Slavic countries. And Barsukov
Where do
basically
you
means
live
butler.
now? And where are you from?
Originally, I'm from Moscow, from Russia. I've spent like half of my life, almost 20 years in Russia, and then the other 20 years of my life in Austria. So
Okay.
I'm in Vienna now. I'm in Vienna now.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. I've been there a bunch of times. I went there for conventions. I
Cool.
like it. It's enjoyable, but I've only been there like a few, days at a time. But
Yeah, yeah.
are you enjoying it there?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's a beautiful city, and people are, like I feel like Austrians and Russians, they're very much like cousin peoples
Right.
in a way. So the Austrians are also very grumpy. Uh, you know,
Well,
a very
I'm Norwegian, so I hear you. Norwegian and
oh,
German, actually.
cool. Yeah, no, this is that's cool. I think there's a a wonderful actor called Christopher Waltz who is
Hmm.
he's actually, I mean, he spent most of his life, I think, in Germany, but he considers, or no, and he was born in Germany and spent most of his life in Vienna, maybe. I'm confused right now, but he was on, I think, on Conan once, and he said, Austrians are very polite. There are two things about Austrians. Austrians are very polite, and they don't mean it. It's cool people.
I don't know. I get kind of the vibe that like I've been to Europe a bunch of times and I get kind of the vibe in like some of the more Western European like upper countries like Sweden or Belgium or Germany and stuff. Like the people are polite but not overly polite. You know,
Yeah, that's
where
true.
if you're in the US and you go to California, they'll be really friendly, and then the moment you leave, they talk around and they talk shit about you. So I'd rather you like be rude to my face than be
Very
nice
true.
and talk shit about me. But all right, man. So listen, I talk about different cultures and all that all day. So what do you have going on?
Oh man, I have a wonderful book coming out in November, on the 12th of November. It's called Sleeping Worlds Have No Memory. And I mean, the disclaimer, I always suck at describing my own books. Right? So I always screw it up. Whenever, I'm like in a meeting with my agent, and somebody says, hey, yeah, right, what's this book is all about? Like I go to the agent, like, Ed, talk about the book. But the book is basically, it goes like
Tell
this.
them how to pronounce my name.
Yeah, tell them how to pronounce my name exactly. That's true. Introduce me and tell them about my book. And the book is about, basically, there is in the country where the action takes place. There's a riot, massive riot in the capital, and a government minister is given the order to gas the rioting crowd. and he just says, no, I won't do that, I won't kill people. And he falls from grace, and he's banished to the border to oversee the construction of the biggest anti-airship tower in history, like the biggest building project ever undertaken by men, which is meant to protect the country from a bordering nation of Duma, and from a possible invasion. And Duma is like 60% Imperial Russia and 40% Austro-Hungarian Empire. So basically two kinds of imperialism blended together, which I really know a lot about, from history. Um, and what he finds out when he arrives is that the special technology is being used in the construction, which is brought by the refugees, by a race of refugees. And this technology is extremely volatile. And he knows it from his own tragic past. And he also finds out that there is this race has a very old story, kind of a legend, but really a story about a real event in the past, which says that if you build a tower of this height with this kind of technology, another tower will appear, and this will this will be the end of the world. And he has to decide whether he wants to you know take care of the world or take care of his own career and return to grace.
Really awesome. Yeah. No, I love it when people, one, I love it when people like incorporate actual like areas and events and they slightly twist it. Like my dad has he has a doctorate in like he would teach history at colleges, and we'd have
Oh,
long discussions about everything from the Napoleonic Wars to like all sorts of stuff in Europe. And I don't know, I find that stuff fascinating. Maybe that's my OCD, but I find it fascinating.
as a fellow OCD sufferer, same thing here. Same thing here.
And
Oh
the whole
man.
thing about like generals being ordered to like kill civilians, that's pretty common actually. It's happened a whole bunch of times in
Yeah,
history.
unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. And
Unfortunately.
sometimes it ends up very badly for them. They don't just
Yeah.
get banished, they get executed.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Though sometimes somebody steps up, prevents the bloodshed, but I think in the majority of cases it just, ends in a huge bloodshed and huge loss of lives,
Yeah.
which is insane coming to
Well,
think
I
of
mean,
it.
we could go further, like almost all wars like that.
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
it's very tribalistic. Like we gotta solve things with our fists, We gotta solve
Yeah.
things with our guns, But that's a different topic entirely. But all right, man. So is this your first book?
It's my first novel, but it's not my first book because the novel is actually inspired by a novella which I wrote in 2020. It's called Tower of Modern Straw, and it's been the novella was nominated for the Nebula Award. It was nominated for
Oh,
the
awesome. Yeah.
yeah. I was lucky. I was just extremely lucky. I was when I
Well,
received the call from.
everybody that wins anything is lucky, but I mean, obviously, you need some talent to get to that point where like luck kicks in.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was when I received the call from CEFWA, which is the governing body of the Nebula Awards. I was the next day I thought, okay, am I still sleeping, or maybe it's the continuation of the dream, whatever. So, uh, and this novella, so it was Nebula nominated, it got nominated for the Subjective Chaos Award, which is a big blogger award. It got on best books of 2021 by from Kirkus reviews. Um, and my then publisher gave it basically a book treatment. So it was a novella, but he gave it a book treatment, which is not very common, but happens. So it's kind of I've dipped
What
my
is
toe.
book treatment?
Book treatment means it had a paperback. It had a Amazon Kindle edition. It had it was a NetGalley. It was
So more
it was
wide release than like,
yeah,
a traditional novella, which they try and like not do quite as much with.
exactly. I mean, to some to a certain point in time, I guess novellas were mostly published in magazines,
Right.
and only recently they started, some novellas started getting public, book treatment, right? And that novella was too. It was first serialized in a magazine called Metaphorosis in 2020, and then some months later in 2021, it came out like a book.
How many
So
pages would you
yeah,
say the novella was?
I think it was like 100, 50, 140.
That's almost considered a book these days. Like I've been to a lot of
Yeah.
author conventions, and I'll talk to like editors and stuff, and they're all down with the total the length. The length of my books are like 300 pages, which I thought is pretty standard, but apparently the standard now is like 180, 190. I was like, to me,
Yeah.
that's a novella, but
True, true. No, there's a lot of discussion actually. What is novella and what is a novel? Because there is this arbitrary boundary which basically says 40,000 words. But why 40,000? Like, and it's very funny that a book which is 41,000, for example, is a novel, and 39,000 is a novella. I mean,
right, right,
what's that? And there was a huge discussion. I think there's this book by Julian Barnes called "The Sense of an Ending." Uh, they even made a movie out of it, with Jim Broadbent. And this book was 42,000, and it won a Booker Prize as a novel. And a lot of people were like, no, come on, man, that's a novella. Come on, there's no way this is a novel. Come on, 42,000, no. But and I think the Bookers, they even had to issue a statement saying, yeah, we understand, but the rules are very clear. More than 40,000
right.
words, this is it's very arbitrary. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, well, and things have changed over time too. Like
Sure.
I feel like there's more of a line drawn in the sand now, and now it's kind of like just do your own thing.
Yeah,
As long as it's good, it sells. I've seen that
absolutely.
a lot with I was gonna ask you about this, like how you approach writing your novels, because I notice a lot of people like it used to be that nobody did first person, and when they did first person, it was kind of like looked down on. It was like the shaky cam of writing,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and
I love first
then a
person.
lot of indie publishers are doing it, and some made big names off of it. And now you even have like people like Stephen King and stuff like that. They'll do some first person. So, I mean, obviously, it's more how well you tell the tale than how you tell it.
Sure.
If it's a good tale, and you wrap it up in like a way that people like, then it doesn't really matter, whether you follow the strict format or whatever. I don't even know that there should be a strict format for artists, but how do you approach it? What do you do?
I actually write both in third person and first person. I tend to write more in third person because I mean, I love first person actually because I'm a big fan of Roger Zelazny. Like the Chronicles of Amber. This Immortal, Dream
Yeah,
Master, and he
I'm
wrote
vaguely familiar with that person. Yeah,
yeah, and he wrote a lot of stuff in first person, a lot of stuff. And he did it wonderfully. But for me, it's when I write in first person, it's very difficult for me to separate myself from the character, right?
right.
Because I inevitably, like some aspects of your personality bleed in. If and this is happens for me much more with first person than with third person. And sometimes it's desirable. Like there is one of my favorite books is The Quiet American by Graham Greene, and it's entirely in first person. And you could argue that it's in some ways autobiographical. The narrator of the story is very much kind of an image of Graham Greene himself, and there it works wonderfully. But for some of the things, I love to kind of put an insulation layer between me and the character. And I what I do love doing, I love writing the male points of view in third person and the female points of view in first person,
Okay.
because when you write a female point of view in first person, there is it's you kind of check yourself more, so it's kind of
Are you a
it's
little
more.
bit worried about like conveying the female perspective?
You can kind of you kind of worried, in some way, but also because you have to present a different, slightly different, different experience, slightly different worldview. So you kind of check yourself more. Is this what the person would say? Is this what this person would say in this situation? Rather than, okay, is this something I would say in this situation?
Right. Do you
So
like
for me,
if you're doing a
yeah.
female character, do you go to female friends and ask them how they would approach that situation?
Yeah, I go to my wife and she tells me not unfiltered, everything she thinks about it, and then I have to rewrite some stuff.
Yeah, I did a story about like the trenches in World War I, and I remember I sent out to beta readers, and a couple people were like, "Yeah, I like it, but some of the letters back home read really unrealistic." And I'm like, "How do you figure out what World War I letters sound like?" Like,
Exactly.
look them up. So I did. I think that dramatically strengthened the story. But yeah, I feel like you got to look into stuff that's like not, native to you.
Of course, of course. You got to first of all research, of course, essential, and second, you got to seek a opinion of the people whose experience is more aligned with this, and then course correct accordingly.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it always amazes going off this topic for a minute. It always amazes me when people don't do research. Like
Yeah.
I've been at author conventions, there'll be a panel, and like they'll have like a member to the panel. It's like, yeah, I never do any research. It's like, well, I'll never read your book. Yeah, but
Exactly.
it sounds like you have like pretty strong background behind everything that you wrote with this whole story about like the commander and all that sort of stuff. So, how did you approach that, and how was that? What was the transition? What was the research? What's involved?
So I was kind of it's an interesting story actually because first of all, if we go back one step to the page count, I just wanted, for the listeners, wanted to clarify that although the novella, which came out in 2020, was 150 pages, the novel itself is 300, right? So it's a proper,
A proper novel.
proper proper novel. Yeah, The Sleeping Worlds is a proper novel. But for the novella, I and for the novel too, I incorporated a lot of my own background, right? So a lot of stuff. So some things you do research, like research currencies. If you aim to mimic a certain historical period, even if you don't use the exact same currency that was used in some country at that period of time, you want to mimic the digits. You want to mimic how things work. But I borrowed a lot from my own culture, from Austro-Hungarian Empire. And the interesting thing about the novella was like again, it came out 2020, 2 years before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And in the novella, and same in the first part of the novel, everybody is expecting an invasion from this nation of Duma, which is again based in Russia and Austro-Hungary. And kind of I thought that I anticipated the invasion. I never said that I predicted it until one of the reviewers of the novel recently, maybe a month ago, pointed out a quote, in the book to me, where a character says, like, if we don't build this tower, Jima will attempt an incursion in 2 years. And this was written in April 2020. So if you add 2 years to it, it's April 2022. So it's almost the exact time the invasion started. So somehow I think I went back to my experiences, the experience of the past, and I just tapped into some kind of zeitgeist and really, really predicted those horrible events.
Do
And
you think
yeah.
like without like delving into like one side or the other, I think that Russia was a little bit provoked. I mean, whether I'm not taking sides or anything, I'm just
Mhm.
saying there was a little bit that kind of like poked the bear. And like I view Russia as a bear, you know. So is that kind of what happens in your novel? Is like do they kind of like provoke the other side and that like leads to the war or whatever, the conflict?
um, in some ways, yes, but in the novel, Duma is more responsible is the ultimate responsible party. And I feel that in the real world, Russia is also the responsible party, because uh, there are many sides to this conflict. But at the end of the day, you can't just attack a country which hasn't attacked you, right?
Right.
You just can't do that. I mean, self-defense is one thing, but if you purposefully invade another country, that's a no-go.
Yeah, like I said, I'm
But
not taking sides because
no,
this
of course,
isn't
of
a
course,
political show. But you
definitely,
know,
absolutely, absolutely.
I just feel like whether it's justified or not, I feel like they at least Russia felt like there was some provocation.
Yeah.
provocation. So I'm just wondering, like, if in your novel, if the people that attack feel like they were in some way provoked, whether they were or not, whether it was in their head or not.
Hmm. The people in the novel, they fear, they live in absolute, fear of the crown prince,
Okay.
who is, his father, the emperor, is in a coma, and everybody thinks it's a natural thing, but we find out near the end of the novel what it really was. And and they fear the crown prince, so the military, they don't want to, what they call a great war, but they're saying, okay, we if we don't do that, we'll be just, removed physically, and in all possible ways. But what there is in the novel, there is a lot of disinformation and propaganda on both sides.
Right.
So
That's pretty
it's all
common, actually. Yeah.
it's pretty common, exactly,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Especially recently, so there's
Yeah.
a lot of propaganda, on both sides. And the character first, in the first part of the novel, he starts on one side of the border, and he's, where he is, he refuses to guess the crowd, and he's banished for it. He has to fight the local hierarchy at at the border, and he experiences, malice, and he experiences propaganda, and he experiences, kind of distortion of truth. And then he goes to Duma. He escapes to Duma, and then he experiences, their propaganda and their distortion of truth. So kind of, he gets a taste of both worlds.
Right. I think that because people are so centered on like everything happening right now is like the biggest thing ever. I think people like governments have been putting out propaganda forever. Like you
Yeah.
look back like in the US, you look back at the early elections, they were talking so much shit about each other.
Exactly.
It's like that was pretty common. I don't know why people think that politics, were pristine and clean back in the day, and now
Never, never.
never, yeah, never happened.
Oh man, that's so true. That's so
Yeah.
never was the case. And even if you see the propaganda posters, like, of the First World War, right? The Germans, the way Germans are depicted, and so on, just the same stuff,
Yeah, no.
basically.
And the thing is, like, I know that, like, this is kind of like a nice, like, aspect of humanity is like, in the trenches, like, sometimes, like, if it was holidays, like Christmas or whatever, like, the two sides would just stop fighting and they'd get together and they'd have Christmas dinner.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
generals would get furious, but they're like, yeah, we're just working people. Why do I want to kill
Exactly.
them?
Oh my
But
God, that's so true. That's so true. I mean, this is like, for common people, it's a huge tragedy,
yeah.
because they can't do anything. You can, get sent to the front,
Well, it's
or
the
you have to,
warmongers, that they're sending other people to die. They're like, we'll just stand back and we'll count the money we made off the latest fighter jet or
Mhm. It's never the ministers, the governmental, people's children who are going to war. All
oh
those
yeah.
people are somehow excused. They have some very, very important duties to take care of, back at home, and so on. So it's never the man up in the food chain who goes to, with a rifle in hand.
Oh yeah, well there was a big thing like just jumping to the whole Vietnam War for a minute. There's a big
Mhm.
thing where like if you're wealthy, you could pay not to be drafted. And then
Yeah,
people like there were songs about it, I'm in a privileged one and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like yeah,
yeah.
it's the whole thing is like a bad like the whole military industrial complex. But that's a whole different topic than your
That's
book.
true.
But all right, so your book, can you get it on like Amazon, Barnes and Nobles? What's it available on?
I think it's available like pretty much everywhere. It's my publisher. He's an interesting publishing house. It kind of exists between worlds. So on one hand, it's a small independent house, publishing house, uh, but on the other hand, they have access to the traditional distribution. So they're part of the member of the entity called the consortium, and it's actually like a. I never heard about it before. It's actually a pretty sleek business move. That's a big entity which unites maybe 100 smaller publishers, and they give those smaller publishers, sales reps and access to the traditional sales channels. So they put the books into bookstores, into Barnes and Noble and so on.
Well, I know a lot of people these days they buy stuff online. It's like traditional bookstores are
Yeah,
just dying, you know.
yeah,
And I
that's
know that a
true.
lot of like bookstores will not stock a book unless it's like a major seller. But you can always go in there and you can ask them, "Hey, can you order this for me?" And they can do it.
They can do it. And I actually heard a podcast not so long ago where there was one of the one bookseller, and they were lamenting. She was lamenting the fact that she said people would come to us and they would say, do you have this book? And I would say, no, 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 I don't have it, but I can order it for you. And they, oh, don't worry about it. I'll buy it on Amazon. Like, and why would I worry about it? I can get the book here in 2 days or in one day. Come on, you know.
Yeah,
So
well, I mean, it's lost on a lot of people, I think, but definitely support bookstores, like especially
absolutely,
indie
absolutely,
bookstores. You know,
absolutely, man. That is so important, and I say this in every interview, whether live interview or written interview. Please support your local bookstore, your local indie bookstore, because you're completely correct, Dan. They can really get books very quickly.
well, not
It,
only that, but like what you're missing, I think what a lot of people are missing out on because they're just looking at the convenience. So like, order it off Amazon, I'll have it tomorrow. But like if you go to the local bookstore, like they'll talk to you, they'll be like, "I like this
yeah,
about this book. Have you checked out this book?" Like like the people that work there are often fans, and they'll be like, "Hey,
absolutely,
if you like this, check this out." And then you'll have like guest readings, and you'll have like all sorts of stuff that like you just miss out on, if it's just
exactly.
ordering online.
It's the sense of community, where wonderful sense of community that we're losing. It's same for games workshops. People then don't play tabletop games in those in those shops anymore. Same for the bookshops. I mean, it's the move online is very convenient, but we're losing, I think, some important things in the
It's
process.
convenient, but I think you're losing a lot of flavor, a lot of like,
Yeah,
the feel of it. Like I do book readings at conventions. I'll sell way more books after the book reading because they're like, oh, I like what you have to say. I like the way that you expressed it. Like like you need to be exposed to stuff. You shouldn't just have like, okay, whoever paid the highest, market price and they get the cool ad, maybe they get
yeah,
Brad
exactly.
Pitt splashing in it real quick. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. So, all right, man, do you have anything planned like conventions or anything like that?
Yeah, I'll be at the London Comic Con at the end of October.
Okay.
So I'm doing like I think it will be 2020. Let me see, maybe 27th of October. I'll be 27th. Yeah, I'll be doing a panel called "Putting Sci in Sci-Fi." Uh, you know, and I'm the fantasy writer.
Right,
so
right.
so but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. I've never been to Comic Con, whether in the US or in the UK before. So
Well, I've been in
I'll
ones
be
in the US. I don't know if it's a little different in the UK, but the ones I've been into the US, like I'll meet like people like I met like Francis daughters and like Neil Adams and all this stuff. Like people
cool.
that like I look up to that are big names. And it seemed like they're very complimentary of my work, but I didn't sell anything. Because like people come by and they'll be like, "Hey, do you have a comic book for sale?" I'm like, no, well, I have an illustrated novel. They're like, oh, but it's not a comic book. All right, and they'll just keep walking. So like you
Oh,
don't even have that chance to like interact with them or talk with them. But it seems like in the comics, the Comic Cons in the U.S. it's like they're very oriented on just comic books.
the
I don't
comic
know
book.
about the
Yeah.
UK though. Like I've done
Oh,
horror conventions in the UK and they're great.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, I've been to the Worldcon recently. The Worldcon in Glasgow. It was a wonderful experience.
Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely wonderful experience. I met a lot of people I've only seen online. And it was quite cool. They started, I think, with a one-man show, an opera version of Dune,
No.
of Dune the movie. It was cool.
I think I love the book Dune. Like I read the book Dune a long time ago. It's a great novel. But
It's an
all
amazing
right,
novel.
so what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, I have a website. It's called I don't know if the no, probably the chat won't be visible. It's called barsukov.com.
How
um,
do you spell it? I'll put it up for people that are just listening. Can you
yeah,
spell it out for them?
sure. It's barsukov.com.
Okay, awesome.
Uh, and I'm on Twitter. I am
Uh,
on Instagram. I'm on Threads. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Facebook. The only thing I'm not in is TikTok. I mean, TikTok.
yeah,
I'm
I was gonna ask. Yeah. Like
I'm
everyone's getting like it's always they're always threatening to ban at any moment, and they're like, "Well, the Chinese government is spying." And it's like, you don't think that other governments are spying on you with everything else? You know, like
oh man, yeah.
like Zuckerberg just came out and talked about how the government was telling him what he could and couldn't post. I mean, come on, you know, they're all corrupt. But anyways, all
Don't
right.
corrupt.
So the best way to like get a signed book or to like see what you're up to or whatever is to go to your website. Do you have like links and contacts and updates on the website?
Absolutely. The links, there's some of the updates, and also I'm very active on Twitter.
Okay.
Out of all social media
Well,
platforms, I'm
it's
most
X
active on
now.
Twitter. It's oh yes, exactly. It's X now. That's true. I can't fathom why they had to rebrand it. I don't. I can't get it. I simply can't get it. But anyway, I'm very active on X. So any updates will be there as well.
Okay. All right, awesome, man. Do you have anything else that you want to pitch? Anything else you want to tell people to check out?
Check out, just buy my novel when it comes out in
Give them
November.
money, like make Netflix
Yeah,
come calling and give them like millions of dollars. But
yeah.
all right, man. Well, thank you very much for doing this interview.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's been a real pleasure.